Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. A clock chimed somewhere. Midnight, said Harry. We'd better get to bed before Snape comes along and tries to frame us for something else. For a few days the school could talk of little but the attack of Mrs. Norris, which kept it fresh in everyone's minds by pacing the spot wherever he had been attacked, as though he thought the attacker might come back. Harry had seen him scrubbing out the message on the wall with Mrs. Scour's all-purpose magical mess remover, but to no effect. The words still gleamed as brightly as ever on the stone. When Filch wasn't guarding the scene of his crime, he was calling red eyes through the corridors, looking out at the suspecting students, trying to put them in detention for things like breathing loudly and looking happy. Gina Weasley seemed very disturbed by Mrs. Norris' fate. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. But you hadn't really got to know Mrs. Norris, Ron told her embarrassedly. Honestly, we're much better off without her. Ginny's lip trembled. Stuff like this doesn't often happen at Hogwarts, Ron assured her. They'll catch the Nada who did it and have it home with here in no time. I just hope he had got us top to petrify Filch before he's expelled. I'm only joking, Ron added hastily as Ginny blanked. The attack had also had an effect on Hermione. It is quite usual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading, but she was now doing almost nothing else. Nor could Harry and Ron had much response from her when they asked what she was up to, and not until the following Wednesday did they find out. Harry had been held back in potions, where Snape had made him stay behind to scrape thumbwards off the desks. After a hurried lunch, he went upstairs to meet Ron in the library, and saw Justin Filch play, the Hufflepuff boy from herbology, coming towards him. Harry had just opened his mouth to say hello when Justin caught sight of him, turned abruptly, and spat off in the opposite direction. Harry found Ron in the back of the library, measuring his history of magic homework. Professor Binns had asked for a 3-foot-long composition on the medieval assembly of European wizards. I don't believe it. I'm still 8 inches short, said Ron furiously, letting go of his parchment, which sprang back into her roll. And Hermione's down 4 feet 7 inches, and her writing is tiny. Where is she? Harry asked, grabbing the tape measure and unrolling his own homework. Somewhere over 3, said Ron, pointing along the shelves. Looking for another book. I think she's trying to read the whole library before Christmas. Harry told Ron about Justin Filch play, running away from him. Don't know why you care. I thought he was a bit of an idiot, said Ron, scribbling away, making his writing as large as possible. All that rubbish about Lockhart being so great. Hermione emerged from between the books.
Це не так сильно.
Hermione emerged from between the bookshelves. She looked irritable and lost, seemed ready to talk to them. All the copies of Hogwarts, a history, have been taken out, she said, sitting down next to Harry and Ron. And there's a 2-week waiting list. I wish I had left my copy at home, but I couldn't fit it in my trunk with all the Lockhart books. Why do you want it? The same reason everyone else wants it. Legends of the Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip, and I can't find the story anywhere else. Hermione, let me read your composition, said Ron desperately, checking his watch. No, I won't, said Hermione suddenly sour. You had 10 days to finish it. I only need another 2 inches. Go on. The bell rang, and Hermione led the way to History of Magic, bickering. History of Magic was the dullest subject on the timetable. Professor Binns, who taught it, was their only ghost teacher, and the most exciting thing that ever happened in his classes was his entering the room through the backboard. Ancient and shriveled, many people said he hadn't noticed he was dead. He was simply got up to teach one day and left his body behind him in an armchair in front of the staff room fire. His routine was no worried in the slightest sense. Today was as boring as ever. Professor Binns opened his notes and began to read in flat tone like an old vacuum cleaner until nearly everyone in the class was in deep stupor, occasionally coming up around long enough to copy down a name or a date, then falling asleep again. He had been speaking for half an hour when something happened that had never happened before. Hermione put up her hands. Professor Binns, glancing up in the middle of a deadly dull lecture in the International Moral Conversation of 1289, looked amazed. Miss Granger, Professor, I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets, said Hermione in a clear voice. Dean Thomas, who had been sitting with his mouth hanging open, gazing out of the window, jerked off his trance. Lavender Brown's hat came off of her arms, and Neville's elbow slipped off his desk. Professor Binns blinked. My subject is history of magic, he said in his dry, wheezy voice. I deal with facts, Mr. Granger, not myths and legends. He cleared his throat with a small noise like a child snapping and continued. In September of this year, a subcommittee of Sardinian sorcerers decided to hold. Hermione's hand was waving in the air again. Miss Grant, please sir, don't legends always have a basis in fact? Professor Binns was looking at her in such amazement. Harry was sure no student had ever interrupted him before, alive or dead. Well, said Professor Binns slowly, yes, one could argue that, I suppose. He peered at Hermione as though he had never seen a student properly before. However, the legend of which you speak is such a very sensational, even ridiculous tale. But the whole class was now hanging on Professor Binns' every word. He looked dimly at them all, every face turned to his. Harry could tell he was completely thrown by such an unusual show of interest. Oh, very well, he said slowly. Let me see, Chamber of Secrets. You all know, of course, that Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago. The prestige that is the uncertain, by the 4 greatest witches and wizards of their age. The 4 schoolhouses are named after them. Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They built this castle together, far from prying Muggle eyes, for it was an age when the magic was feared by common people, and witches and wizards suffered much persecution. He paused, gazed barely around the room, and continued. For a few years, the founders worked in harmony together, seeking out youngsters who showed sign of magic and bringing them to the castle to be educated. But then disagreements sprang up between them. A rift began to grow between Slytherin and the others. Slytherin wished to be more selective about the students admitted to Hogwarts. He believed that magical learning should be kept within magical families. He disliked taking students of Muggle parentage, believing them to be untrustworthy. After a while, there was a serious argument on the subject between Slytherin and Gryffindor, and Slytherin left the school. Professor Binns paused again, pursing his lips, looking like a wrinkled old tortoise. Reliable historical sources tell us this much, he said, but these honest facts have been absurd by the factual legend of the Chamber of Secrets. The story goes that Slytherin had built in a hidden chamber in the castle, of which the other founders knew nothing. Slytherin, according to the legend, scaled the Chamber of Secrets so that no one would be able to open it until its own true heir arrived at the school. The heir alone would be able to unseal this Chamber of Secrets, unleash the horror within, and use it to purge the school of all who were worthy to study magic. There was a silence, but he finished telling the story. It wasn't the usual sleepy silence that filled Professor Binns' classes. There was unease in the air as everyone continued to watch him, hoping for more. Professor Binns looked faintly annoyed. The whole thing is errant nonsense, of course, he said. Naturally, the school has been searched for evidence of such a chamber, many times by the most learned witches and wizards. It does not exist. A tale told to frighten the gullible. Hermione's hand was back in the air. Sir, what exactly do you mean by the horror within the chamber? That is believed to be some sort of monster, which the heir of Slytherin alone can control, said Professor Binns in his dry, ready voice. The class exchanged nervous looks. I tell you, the thing does not exist, said Professor Binns, shuffling his notes. There is no chamber and no monster. But sir, said Sir Miss Finnegan, if the chamber can only be opened by Slytherin's true heir, no one else would be able to find it, would they? All nonsense of flattery, said Professor Binns in an aggravated tone. If a long succession of long Hogwarts headmasters and headmistresses haven't found the thing, but Professor, piped up Brevity Patel, you'd probably have to use dark magic to open it. Just because a wizard doesn't use dark magic doesn't mean he can't. Miss Penny, however, snapped Professor Binns. I repeat, but if he likes of Dumbledore... But maybe you've got to be related to Slytherin, so Dumbledore couldn't, began Teeth Thumbers, but Professor Bint had just enough.